So, Miss Sir, your voice is not audible. Please test it. Test the voice first. So, Miss Sir, kindly test your voice so that we can start now. So, Miss Sir, kindly.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Uh, Sir, so that we are starting now. Good morning,
You are
everyone.
right.
We welcome you all to this foundation course on sciences. Today is the day 2, and we have our expert today, Dr. Sumit Sharma. He is our assistant professor in Department of Biotechnology. He is very good in bioprocessing engineering. So he will be sharing his knowledge and experience with you through this workshop. So I welcome Mr. Dr. Sumit Sharma to kindly start their workshop according to their own procedure.
Thank you, Rishabh, for your kind introduction. Before I start with my presentation as well as the workshop, I would like to thank my principal, Madam Dr. Ajay Sareen, who has given me the opportunity to be with you in this workshop, this 6-day workshop. Then I would like to thank my president of DAV as CMC, uh, Shri Poonam Suriji, Padam Shri Poonam Suriji, as well as in the end, I would like to thank my HOD, Dr. Jitendra Kumar, because of whom I'm able to give my presentation to you all today. Uh, Now, regarding to the presentation, I am myself, as you know, I am a professor in biotechnology. So I'll be talking today about bioprocess engineering. What is it and how we go about it? Before I start with the bioprocess engineering, I would like to give a brief introduction about my department, uh, that is Department of Biotechnology. Next slide. Yeah, this is the Department of Biotechnology. It was established in year 2004. At that time, at that time, our principal was Madam Principal P.P. Sharma, because of whom this department came into being in our HMB college. It was one of the first department to be established in biotechnology in district of Jalandhar. Next, next slide. Yeah, coming to the infrastructure of our department, this department is having its own labs. We are having our own animal tissue culturing labs, our own microbiological labs. We are having biochemistry labs. We are having molecular biology lab. Then we have got animal tissue culture lab, plant tissue culture labs, and few other labs as well. So these are the labs in which our students are doing their own hands-on training on practicals, what they are doing. We've got different types of classes which are there. Most of the classes which now we have are the ICT enabled classes, where we give lectures through different modes, including PPT, presentation. Then we have got video lectures. Nowadays, because of COVID, we are into the online mode as well. So we are giving the lectures on online basis as well. So these are the different things. We've got the next slide, please. Mm. These are the different instruments which we have in our labs. We have got what do you say? The fermenters are there. We've got BOD incubators. We've got spectrophotometers. We've got fluorescent microscopes. We've got autoclaves. We've got incubators. You name anything. We've got PCR. We've got laminar airflow, LAFs, we've got photo timers as such. Then we have in our lab, we've got very high tech distillation equipments. We have along with that, we do have different other high tech and high end instruments as such in our labs, which we are using to perform different types of experiments for the betterment of the biotechnology as well as for the betterment of the students as such. Next slide, sir. So here we have the students in our biotechnology department. They are supposed to do some research as well. So what these people do is they go in for some research, and then we have got a presentation happening by them. Every student in BSc biotechnology has to go give this presentation. This is all based upon the research findings which they do, which is a part and parcel of the curriculum. The research topics, they can be varied. They can be of different types. They can vary from virology to a genetic problem to something else. So all these things, the people, the students, under the guidance of their teachers, they are doing these research projects, these small research, and as well as uh, important research projects which these students do, and they give us a presentation for the same every year in the month of August to September. Next slide, sir. Next. So we got the seminars, we go in for the seminars, we go in for the workshops, hands-on training. This year too, we had got seminars happening by the Rapture seminars by different scientists, research scientists, by different other peoples. We are doing it with the help of institutes. The Rapture Biotechnology is an example which came here for giving us the information about that. Then we had got various professors from different institutes like ICER and other places who come here to give their lectures in different fields as such. Now coming to the collaborations, we've got the collaborations with different fields where our students undergo different types of trainings. We've got MOUs being signed with all these. These are few of them with whom we've got our MOUs signed, as well as our collaboration happening with them. These include the Rapture Biotech, Orbit Biotechnology, Nestle is the one where we send our students for training. Then we have got Verka, we've got Lupin, we've got MaxGB, we've got a few other companies in which our students are undergoing training, as well as institutes like Punjab University where students undergo training, as well as these are also our recruiters, some of you, where our students get placed as such. Now, come to the next slide. So these are students who have been placed. We've got the on-campus as well as off-campus placement as such. These are the students who have been placed around 15 of them, and they got placed the last year. And then we've got few students who are working in different, these were the ones who were placed in campus drive. Then we have got few students who are placed in off-campus drives as well. Off-campus placement also happens here. So these are the students who've got their jobs done. Next. So these are a few. Example is Ruchi, who is working in US. Then we have got Monica Sharma working in IK Gujarat Science City. Then we have got Pavneet Sharma and few others. There are many and numbers. I've not put all those students here as such. Next slide, sir. These are the merit holders, students who have got laurels to the college and the university exams. Most of the students who are here are the toppers in university. Gold medalists like Bhanu Priya is there. Then we have got Monica Sharma. We've got Sumandeep Kaur, who are the university toppers. Tinder Kaur is an example, who were the university toppers in different years. So these are the students who are the pride of our department. They are the ones who are scoring very high marks, good marks in university, and they are giving a good name to the college as such, as well as to the university, and they're doing very well in their further studies as such. Next slide, sir. So industrial visits, they are a part and parcel of our training or of our course. The students they go to different places for their industrial visits. A few of them include the Jagajit Hamira. Then we have got some students going to Chandigarh, IMTech Chandigarh. Then we have got students going to IISER Mohali, then IIT Delhi, and few other places where our students they often visit. There are many industries which our students visit every now and then. So that is also one part of our curriculum. Then is next. So the frontier of research where we are working nowadays, that is virology. As you know, COVID is there. So we have got frontiers of research in that as well, virology, microbiology, animal biotechnology, biochemistry, forensic sciences, and many more areas where we are working, even in food biotechnology, food microbiology. So these are the crux areas where our students are working in research as such. So the next one. These are the few paper cuttings which are there. Next, sir. So why to choose HMV? These are the few reasons which HMV does possess, because of which, if you feel like coming to for your studies or the further either in PG or UG, these are the facilities which we have for the well qualified faculties. There we've got Wi-Fi campus. We've got well equipped air-conditioned labs that of ATC, PTC, microbiology, biochemistry, bioinformatics, and research labs. You've got ICT-enabled classrooms on campus as well as off-campus placement drive. This happens every year. Every now and then we are having this campus drives as well as off-campus drives. The head of this section is our Dr. Gulagong, along with his whole team. I'm a part of that team. Then we've got moral-based education. That is very important. We've got every week, we've got Havan Yajna which are being performed so that our students are bound to the morals as well. Then we've got the air-conditioned library with InfluNet and other facilities as such. The library is containing millions of books of different types. We've got a safe and secure AC hostels as such in our college. So that is also a part of the whole thing. Very secure environment which we give, along with the holistic approach to the students. Students can join NCC, students can join NSS, students can join different types of games. Everything is available in the college. Very high-end gymnasium we have, very high-end swimming pools, very high-end. We've got our theaters. We are very high-end auditoriums we do have. So that is why, if you feel like, you can come to HMV College. Now, coming to my own talk, the basic talk which I would be dealing with today, that is the biotechnology, the bioprocess engineering. This is something which is very important. Bioprocess engineering, as such, biotechnology is concerned. I'll be going through all these contents as such. Why biotechnology? Why bioprocess engineering? What is the importance of this thing? That is what we'll be talking about today. Now, coming to bioprocess engineering and biotechnology, biotechnology is something which works in different directions for the betterment of society by the use of technology as well as biology. Here we have got different sets of components in biotechnology, that is your biochemistry, microbiology, virology, animal tissue culture, plant tissue culture, and so on and so forth. In all these research, say we have to make a hormone or we have to make a vaccine for say millions and millions of billions of people, we need to go in for our bioprocess engineering, where we can scale up the production of our whole product. So the scaling up or the commercial production which happens in our this biotechnology field, it happens by the use of bioreactors as well as by the use of technology that is called as the bioengineering technology. Bioengineering is basically where we, biofermentation and bioengineering is where we go in for coming up to the different types of products for making different types of products. Now, come next slide. Now, coming to the brief introduction of bioprocess engineering. Bioprocess engineering, in this case, what we do is we use different types of microorganisms, living microorganisms. We use different types of animal cells. We use different types of plant cells, as well as we use yeast. We use actinomycetes. We can use many other things for the production of many different types of products. They can be of different types. They can be hormones. They can be vitamins. They can be either vaccines or something else which we make. Even wine and whiskey is a part of bioprocess engineering. So we can also use enzymes for direct production. In this case, what we do is we go in for the immobilization of enzymes, and these enzymes are used for the production as such. Then we have got the what is the difference between what are the chemical and bioprocess engineering? These two disciplines, they are parallel in nature, except for the fact that there are few tweaks which are happening into the bioprocess engineering. We use different other, since we are dealing with living organisms and very sensitive organisms. So here we are dealing with different approaches which are there. No doubt we use some biochemical as well as chemical know-hows in this field as well. Now, bioprocess engineering is a specialized version of chemical engineering. So it's a specialized version, very specialized for large-scale commercial manufacturing of a variety of biological products like wine is there, whiskey is there, pharmaceutical products is there, biofuels is there, and so on and so forth. So what we do here is we are working into that direction so that we are able to produce many things by the use of the bioreactors as such. So it's a specialized thing where we do, since these reactions which are happening, they are very sensitive, so we need to control them in a different way. So that is what we are trying to do in a bioreactor. We are trying to do in bioengineering as such. Next slide. When was bioengineering started? How do the things come up? The first institute that was started for fermentation, and Institute of Fermentation and Brewing, that was in Helmholtz in Berlin, in Germany. They started for the first time. This institute was later on shifted to Helmholtz in Germany as such. Uh, how did things come up? This was the first institute which became which filled the gap between the natural and engineering sciences slowly but steadily. In India, the first bioprocess engineering started in year 1950. Uh, Now, coming to the first product which was produced on a very large scale, that was penicillin. Now, penicillin, as you all know, was discovered by Alexander Fleming. Do you know what happened during World War II? Anyone? Okay, during World War II, there was a very major problem at that time happening. First one was influenza came up. As we have got today, we have got COVID-19 coming up. At that time, we had got a very major problem with the influenza virus as such. So influenza was happening. Along with that, we were having a world war. So in the world war, what was happening was the people were getting injured, lamed. There was some cuts, wounds happening, for which many deaths were going on. I mean, people were dying every now and then. At that time, Alexander Fleming was working on penicillin as such for controlling influenza. And by default, by some mistake, he dropped few of his penicillin species into the Petri plate, which consisted of at that time Staphylococcus bacteria. So when he came back, what he saw was that the penicillin had destroyed all the Staphylococcus bacteria. So then he realized that you can use this for Staphylococcus or other microbial killing of this yeast or mold can be used. So this was the first thing. This penicillin was the first time used for a large-scale production, as well as it was used for treating many soldiers at the time of World War II. It's helped in healing many people. It saved many lives at that time. So same thing is happening now as well. We are working into the direction of production of COVID-19 vaccines as such. So maybe very soon we might find the answer to that, and we might be producing them on a very large scale in a bioprocess engineering institute or an industry. Next slide. Now, in the early fermentation design, when this fermentation was just starting up, we were having many problems with that thing. The first problem with this designing was that we were not able to have that efficiency. Whenever we went in for production, there was always some kind of a problem which was happening because of the fact that we were not very much well aware about sterilization and cleaning issues at that time. We never knew that sterilization plays a very important part in the bioprocess engineering at that time. Now, coming to what is sterilization? By sterilization, what we mean is to kill the microorganism to an extent of 99.9. So at that time, we were not very much aware how to go in for about that. But now, slowly and slowly, we are very much well aware how sterilization can be done. We use it every now and then. Even in our labs, we're using it for our fermentation everywhere. Then as air was not properly dispersed. Second thing was the air dispersal. In fermenter, whenever you grow a microorganism or whenever you grow any organism, say an animal cell or a plant cell, we need air for that. And that time the dispersal of air was not known. Mixing was not up to the mark. things were to be mixed, the broth in which you are growing something, you need to mix it up. So we were not doing at that time. Even the baffles were not there. What are baffles? Baffles are basically baffles were not there, which were meant for stopping the vertex in the liquid. What is vertex? The first thing, vertex is when we mix, we rotate water or we rotate a broth, it forms a whirlpool. You might have seen in your washing machine, when you go in for washing, there is a whirlpool which makes up. So that whirlpool does not allow the mixing properly. So we need to break that whirlpool. For that, what we need is we need to have flaps on the sides of the fermenter which can break the whirlpool. So what we do is we break the whirlpool on the sides which is there with the help of these. We break these things as such. So we are working into that direction to make these whirlpools work for us. Uh, it's a small beginning now. It was a small invention, but it helped in the growth of bioprocess engineering to a large extent. Next slide. Next. So the first bioprocess or the large scale fermenter which was used, it was used for the production of yeast. Now yeast is something which is used for many product formation. Like we use it for bread formation. We use it. Yeast is used for wine and whiskey as such. So the first time when it was done was by D. Breeze and his friend Lieberman in 1944 for the large scale production of yeast. Then we also had the production of acetone with the help of fermenters a few years back. Acetone is something which is very important for many biochemical reactions as well as chemical reactions. So that was also done with the help of a fermenter. So later on, what we did was we modified the fermenters, we redesigned the fermenters. Then these fermenters were used for production of many other compounds, either secondary metabolites or primary metabolites. The first pilot fermenter which was erected in India, that was in Hindustan Antibiotic Private Limited, Hindustan Antibiotic Limited in Pune in year 1950, as I had already said. So in 1950, this fermentation started. We started with the fermenters as such in India as well. Next slide. Now coming to the designing of the fermenter. This is the most important aspect of a fermenter. If anyone has to go in for fermentation or anyone has to go in for the bioprocess engineering, he needs to or she needs to know what is a fermenter, what is the design of a fermenter. That is very important. So we have got different types of fermenters. The range can be from 1 liter, 2 liter, 5 liters, 10 liters, 20,000 liters, 1 lakh liters, 20 lakh liters. It depends. Say for wine and whiskey, we've got very large fermenters. They can be either 5 story height. These fermenters can be. So if you talk about the basic structure of these, I have zoomed it up for you people. If you see, this fermenter consists of two plates. One is the bottom plate and the other one is the top plate. These two plates, if you see, they are semi circle in nature. The top plate as well as bottom plate. The top plate is having some openings which are meant for either addition of different things into the fermenter, or they are meant for addition of a motor or a rotator inside the fermenter. If you see in the center, there is an impeller. Outside, you've got the jacket which is there, which is meant for either raising the temperature or cooling the temperature. If you want to raise the temperature in the jacket outside, you can add water. Cooling water, if you want to reduce the temperature, you can add cool water. If you want to increase the temperature, you can add hot water to them. Then we have got the sampling ports in the end, as well as for harvesting. If you find out, then we've got the baffles on the side, the ones which are darkened. They are the baffles which I had already talked, which stop the what do you say, the whirlpool from forming. Now this fermenter consists of three. If you talk about the fermenters, it is having full volume, void volume, as well as working volume. If you see where up to the point where you have got the broth filled up, that is called as the working volume, and the void volume is the top volume where there is nothing. The empty space is called as the void volume. So in this, we also have some different ports which are there. So that is something which we do. Here in this fermenter, we are trying to maintain the fermentation process. The transfer of mass is happening, heat transfer is happening. So momentum is also there, mixing is there. All these things are happening inside the fermenter, which can give us the desired results. Next slide. Now coming to the types of fermenters. So we've got different types of fermenters which are there. Fermenters can be stir tank fermenters, bioreactors, air fermenters, airlift fermenters, bubble column fermenters. So different types of fermenters are there. Now coming to the first one, the stir tank bioreactor, or the first stir tank STB, or we also called it stir tank bioreactor or stir tank fermenter. This is a fermenter which we are using for the production of microorganisms or the products which we obtain from the microorganisms, specifically bacteria. Here we are using. Then we have got the airlift fermenters. These are generally used when we go in for animal cell culturing. We need to produce something out of the animal cells. So there we need airlift fermenters. Then we have got the bubble column fermenters. Again, they're used for plant tissue culturing as well as for the animal tissue culturing to a large extent. These are the ones which are very specialized, the bubble column fermenters, because they help in a very large amount of oxygen transfer, which is important for those cells which need very large amount of oxygen for their growth. So that is something which happens with the fermentation in these three types. Beside this, we've got continuous stir tank bioreactors, STBRs as well, CTBRs as well, which are there. So we are having different types of fermenters. Next one. Next. Okay, why sterilization is important? This is the most important step before we enter into fermentation. Why do we go in for sterilization? Sterilization is done to stop the growth of unwanted microorganisms in our fermenter. Say I have to produce wine or whiskey. I do not want any other microorganism except for my yeast, that is Saccharomyces cerevisiae, to grow. I won't like any other microorganism which will grow inside my broth, which will disturb the production later on. So that is why what we do is we go in for sterilization first. Now sterilization, again, it depends upon what type of material we are using. If it is a heat sensitive material, which is very heat sensitive, so broth which is heat sensitive, it goes for coagulation when we heat it. So what we do in that case is we go in for the filter sterilization. Now what do we understand by filter sterilization? In this case, what we do is we remove the microorganism with the help of filters. As you see in the diagram here, the feed is passed through the filters. The microorganism, they get entrapped, the red colored microorganism, they get entrapped into the filter, and the filtrate comes out. That consists of the sterilized product. So here we use these filters. The filtration can be microfiltration as such. So microfiltration is done in this way. Then we use radiations. As you know, these days, you might have heard of UV radiations, which are meant for killing of the microorganisms. We can expose a surface area. We can expose a product to radiation. Generally, UV radiations are used. Sometimes we use X-rays as well as gamma radiations as such, but that is very rare. So UV radiations, what they do is they also kill the microorganism, which if we expose some surface, or we expose something to UV radiations for 15 to 20 minutes, most of the microorganisms, they are killed, as well as the viruses, they are killed by the radiation as such. Then ultrasonic treatment, again, a very important way. In this, what we do is we use boom sounds for killing of the microorganism. By doing this, what they do is these ultrasonic treatment, they break up the cell wall of the microorganism and they kill the microorganism. So that is also one way with which we can go in for the sterilization of our product. Then is heat treatment. Now, heat treatment, coming to the heat treatment, whenever we expose a broth or any other product to 121 degrees centigrade at a pressure of 15 psi for 15 to 20 minutes, we kill around 99.9% of the microorganism as well as the viruses as such. So we do this with the help of autoclave. Whereas in bioprocess engineering, we use different types of heat exchangers like PHE, plate heat exchangers are there, shell and shell tube heat exchangers are there, shell and tube, and other types of heat exchangers which are there. We can use them for a large scale sterilization whenever required. Then we have got the chemical treatment. Again, a very important way. in which chemical treatments can be utilized. You might have know, all of you are now well aware of the fact that alcohol is a very important chemical which is used to kill viruses. So what we can use viruses as well as the microorganisms or any other undesirable organism which is growing in our surroundings. So we can kill them with chemical treatment. Different types of chemicals can be used. We can use alcohol, C2H5OH. We can use methyl alcohol. We can use propanol. We can use butanol. We can use isopropanol. We can also use many other chemicals. Phenol is an example which you can use. So these are the things which can be used, but kindly don't use them in your household. These are the ones which I am telling now. So you use alcohol to which gives the best results. Then how to use the other chemicals? It's a long process. I don't have time to explain all those. How do you use them? So these are the ways with which we can go in for the which we can use for our sterilization. So sterilization can be in case of heat sterilization. Again, you can do two types of sterilization. One is moist heat sterilization. The other one is dry heat sterilization. In case of dry heat sterilization, moist, I have already told that you put them in the autoclave and you put up a steam pressure of 15 psi. You can kill the microorganism. Whereas in case of dry heat sterilization, what we do is we use a hot air oven, or we use infrared light or red heat here, and this, or we can go in for flaming as such, either aag laga do. So we can do that as well. So dry heating is again a method. In this, the temperature is around 150 degrees centigrade, and we expose the product to 150 degrees centigrade for 2 to 3 hours. So what we do is we kill the microorganism there as such. Next slide. Next. Now, bioprocess engineering that uses living cells, say chloroplast or bacteria or enzymes. In this process, the fermentation, we have got stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. We'll discuss these stages as they come. So these are the different stages which are there. Whenever we go in for the bioprocess engineering, every stage is having its own importance. Every stage is very important, and only then we can get the final product. So stage 1 is the critical stage where we go in for the sterilization of the equipment, we go in for the sterilization of broth, and then we start with the actual process which is there. Next slide. Now stage 1, very important stage. Upstream process here, this is also called as an upstream process. Upstream means where we start up. So this process is the selection of the microbial strain, which is having, say I have to produce an enzyme or a hormone or an insulin, say I have to produce insulin from E. coli. In that case, I need to have a microorganism which is containing the gene which is required for insulin production. So that gene can be introduced into the bacteria, say the E. coli here. So we introduce this gene into the E. coli. This can be done with the help of the genetic engineering which is there. rDNA technology is an example which we teach here in the college as well. So by genetic engineering, what we do is we are into our, by genetic engineering we can put the desired gene into the bacteria as such. So this is very important, a very critical step. Then this strain needs to be pure strain. So which strain we are using, we need to even purify that strain. That is done with different microbiological techniques. Like what we do is we take up a Petri plate, we grow our microorganism, then we take one bacterial colony, we then further purify it, and until we have got a pure culture, we don't start with the fermentation as such. When we have got the pure culture, we start with the fermentation. Now coming to the genetic engineering aspect, I'll be showing you a small little video later on where you'll be finding how we cut open a gene and how do we put up the desired gene as such whenever we require. Next slide. Now stage 2. What happens here? This is again another stage. First one was the stage 1 where we had just gone in for our microorganism selection. Now here what we do is we convert the substrates into the desired product. Example here is, say I have a substrate molasses. Molasses is a byproduct which we obtain from the from the sugar industry. Sira, we call it sira in Punjabi or in Hindi. So that sira or that molasses, blackstrap molasses, can be converted into alcohol, that is wine or whiskey, by the use of a microorganism that is called as a Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So this Saccharomyces cerevisiae, when we use for the production of from a very simple product, say either potatoes, from where we get vodka, or from molasses, from where we get our wine, sorry, we get our whiskey, or grape juice, from where we can have our wine as such. So this is a process in which we fermentation is started. So this is the one which is mostly used in industry for fermentation. Next slide. Now coming to the fermentation, we can have fermentation done with different types. First one is the fermentation, it is submerged fermentation. Second one is the surface fermentation. Then we have got the solid state fermentation. Different types of fermentations are there. Different mathematical approaches are required for the fermentation, different types of products and different types of fermentations processes. Now coming to submerged fermentation, these are the fermentations where we grow a microorganism, we grow an organism, we grow an animal cell or a plant cell in a liquid broth in a fermenter. If you see here, this is a fermenter here in which we are growing our microorganisms or animal cells as such. Then is the surface fermentation. Surface fermentation, the best example for this is bread. So if you have seen that bread is a surface fermentation product, and this what we do is we add a Saccharomyces cerevisiae to the dough and we allow it to ferment it for some time. What you see is after some time the dough rises because of the production of two things. One is alcohol, the other one is carbon dioxide. Now this carbon dioxide leads to the rising up of the dough. So that is also which is there. Then is a solid state fermentation. Again, the same process. In this case, the fermentation is done on a solid surface. Specifically, this is done in case of tenkoji. These are Japanese foods which are made out of fermentation. Tenkoji, sauerkraut, where we go in for the solid fermentation as such. Next slide. Now, genes can be made. We can use genes for genetic engineering for the use in bioprocess engineering. So that I have already talked about. That what we do is we can add genes to genetically engineer an organism for the bioprocess engineering, which is very important. Say I have to increase the yield, I need to have a specified type of microorganism which increases the yield of, say, wine or a whiskey or something else. So that is something which is very important. I'll show you a video here. You can go through the video here where you see how the things are working up.
A common technique in genetic engineering is to insert a new gene into a loop of bacterial DNA called a plasmid. The molecular tool used to cut DNA is a restriction enzyme such as EcoR1. The enzyme has a precise shape that allows it to run along the groove of the double helix, scanning, in the case of EcoR1, for the base letter sequence GAATTC. The enzyme then cuts the plasmid at this specific point, allowing a new piece of DNA to be inserted. When it cuts, EcoR1 leaves a sticky end. This helps the new gene to attach. The joins are then stitched together by another enzyme called DNA ligase. The genetically engineered bacteria is grown in a culture medium. Very quickly, large numbers of the bacteria can be produced, each with a copy of the inserted gene. The bacteria duly manufacture whatever protein the gene codes for, and so the desired product is made.
So right. So what we have done here is we have inserted our gene, we have inserted the required gene into the genome as such, and what we are having here is that we have got the production happening in this case. This production of the desired component of the protein or a product in the leads to the production of the desired product. Say this was for E. coli. So what we have done here is we've used an E. coli gene into which we have inserted an insulin gene. That insulin gene came from the humans. And then what we have got the bacteria which are producing insulin for us. So this insulin this insulin gene containing microorganism, that is E. coli, that can be grown in the fermenter or in the fermentation process as such. Now the stage 3, the stage 2 where we have got the production happening, then is the stage 3. Now in case of the stage 3, what happens here is we go in for the downstream processing. Now what do you understand by downstream processing is how do you recover a product which is formed by our fermentation process. This is a very major problem which is there. It's the most difficult process where we go in for the obtaining up of our centrifugation system as such. Now how do we do it? That is very important. Before that, there are different methods with which we can do. First is the centrifugation, then we have got the filtration, then we have got the chromatography, then we can use other methods as such. Now coming to this downstreaming, centrifugation is a process in which what we do is we centrifuge the broth at a very high RPM. RPM means rotations per minute, and what we do is we remove our product. It can be either a solid or a liquid from the broth as such. The broth which contains our product, so we can use that. Second one is filtration. In this, what we do is we filter our broth and we remove all the microorganisms, all the things which are not required, and we keep the filtrate for our product isolation. Then is chromatography. We can use chromatography as such. Ion exchange chromatography can be utilized here for separating our product from this whole broth as such. So these are the important things which are there. Next slide. Now, over the last, in the last few decades, there has been a very much major interest in people in production of different types of biological compounds, like insulin is there, like hormones are there, like different vaccines are there. Then enzymes are there, like amylases, proteases, lipases, pectinases, cellulases. Rennet is something which is used for the production of cheese. Proteases is something which is used for clarification of juices. Lipases is something which is used for removing of lipids, specifically from some products like lassi. Then we have got the pigments, different types of pigments which we are using. The natural pigments which are obtained from plants or animals, they can be produced on a large scale for our product. Then aroma and flavors, different types of flavors like flavors of ghee, of butter, we can produce on a large scale in a fermentation industry. Aromas, the ones which are used in perfumery industries, they can be used, these aromas and flavors, they're all natural, they don't have any side effects, so we can use them as such. Then small organics such as ethanol. Production of ethanol is a very major industry here in India as well abroad. Ethanol is consumed as wine, whiskey, vodka, and few other drinks which is there. Oxalic acid, citric acid, lactic acids, these are also parts of small organics that are also produced. Ethanol nowadays, it's produced on a large scale for even our sterilization processes as such. Then is different types of plant growth hormones which are required by plants. They are also produced with the help of these fermentation processes. Many protein enriched agricultural residues, they are converted into animal feeds. As you know, the chaff which is left, the turi jisko hum bolte hain, that is something which can be converted into animal feed in a very good animal feed which gives very good results. By fermentation, we reduce it into something which is very easily digested, which is having no toxins in them. So we convert this thing into animal feed and it can be utilized by the animals as such. Now antibiotics, I had already started with penicillin in the start. Antibiotics can be produced. Example is penicillin, oxytetracycline, ampicillin, amoxicillin. All these can be produced. These antibiotics can be produced with the help of the fermentation industry. Then is biological controlling agents like bioinsecticide, bioherbicides. As we all know, these days we are into organic farming. We are into organic things. So we can produce biopesticides as well as bioherbicides, which have got no ill effect upon human health. So we can produce them as well on large scale. Then spore inocula like Roquefort, penicillin Roquefort, which is used in blue cheese. This can also be produced on a large scale. Decolorization of dyes. This is again an important aspect. There are many effluents which are produced by industries like textile industry or leather industry. We can go in for the decolorization of their dyes with the help of these fermenters as well. Biopulping and bioremediations can also be done. By bioremediation, what we mean is we remove different types of products from the environment. Say there is an oil spillage in a water body. We can remove that oil spillage with the help of fermentation process. So we can remove those oils. We can clean our environment by the use of fermentation as such. Next slide. Before I deal with effluent treatment, I would like to tell few things about how do you control the fermentation as such. The fermentation can be controlled with many ways. Fermentation, as you know, there are different types of probes which are there in the fermenter. You can go in for using those probes for checking what is the amount of pH. Like example is pH probe. It tells about the amount, the pH which is there, the pH of the broth which is there. Then we've got the thermi probe, or also called as the RTD probe. This is a temperature probe which helps in checking the temperature of the broth as such. Since if the temperature is known, only then we can have the right product which is there. Similarly, we have got thermi probe, temperature probe, and a few other probes which are there. So these probes are very important. Oxygen probe is there, DO probe as such. Carbon dioxide probes are also, which are fixed up into the fermentation as such. Now coming to the effluent treatment. Whenever we go in for fermentation, the end product, the effluent which are produced, you cannot throw them right away into any water body, or you can't simply let it go. We need to treat it first before we go in for the effluent treatment. So effluent treatment is a very major important part of the fermentation industry. So for environment safe disposal, we go in for effluent treatment. There are three things. One is influent, then is effluent, and then we have got the sludge. The first one is the influent. The untreated industrial wastewater, it is called as the influent. Effluent is when we go in for the treatment, and then we have got the sludge, where we go in for the sludging or the solid part which is left. That is what is called as the sludge treatment. Next slide. Now treatment. Now treatment and the mechanism of the ETP, also called as the effluent treatment plant. Treatment levels are of three types. One is preliminary treatment. Second is the primary treatment. Third is the secondary treatment. Then we have got the tertiary treatment. And then we have got the different mechanisms which are there, the physical, chemical, as well as biological ways which are there. First one is the preliminary treatment. In case of preliminary treatment, there are 2 or 3 processes which we follow. First one is the sedimentation. Second one is the filtration. And then we have got even flocculation sometimes. Now coming to the sedimentation, what we do here is that we allow the effluent to stand for some time, so that the solid particles, they settle at the bottom, and the liquid particles or the liquid media that comes up. So this is done in very large tanks. We allow the effluent to stand in those tanks for a long time, say 24 to 48 hours, and we allow the settlement of the different products into that. So for that, sometimes we add alum into the liquid so that the product gets settled at the bottom. This is very important. Then we can go in for the filtration. Filtration is done with the help of simple filters. It can be even a simple plain muslin cloth or a wire mesh, which is used for the preliminary filter treatment. Now, why do we do the first preliminary treatment? This is done so as to reduce the biological oxygen demand load. BOD load needs to be removed with the help of preliminary treatment. Generally, it is seen that the BOD load, it gets reduced to around 60 to 70% in case of the first treatment which happens in the effluent as such. If we do not even go for this, the rivers will get polluted, their BOD level will increase. When the BOD level of the river increases, the fishes will die, the microorganism cannot grow inside. Only aerobic microorganism will grow in the rivers or the ponds. And what will it will lead to? It will lead to the death of the fishes. It will lead to one more thing, that is the growth of unwanted microorganisms, generally obnoxious smelling these microorganisms. What we see is the rivers, they get polluted because of non-treatment of the industrial wastewater which is there. So that is why what happens is they start smelling, they get polluted, they are having different other problems which are there. The stagnation happens because of these non adhering to the effluent treatment plants which are there. The second one which is there, next slide please. The second one is the primary treatment. Now, why primary? Here, what they have done is the primary treatment again. In this case, what we do is we are removing the suspended solid organic matter, as well as we are controlling the pH, and we are going for the coagulation and flocculation. Now, this is again a very important part in case of primary treatment. What we do here is we again going for the chemical coagulation and flocculation. What we do is we add different chemicals into the liquid. By doing that, what we do is we mix it up very fast. We try to coagulate the whole thing so that something gets the few things which are there, they are precipitated and they settle in the bottom. Flocculation is also done with the help of different chemicals. Example, alum I have already told about. So what happens here in this case is that the flocculation leads to formation of flocculants on the top layer of your liquid. This top layer, the flocculants which are present on the top layer, they can be removed, they can be skimmed off, so that you have got the clean water which comes into the center. So that is something again which is done with the help of preliminary treatment. Again, a BOD load of around 80% is reduced here. We remove the BOD load from 100% to 80% of this effluent which is there. We work into that direction so that the water which comes out after some times, it is clean, it is fit for drinking as such, or being released into the river waters or the river bodies which are there, so that does not affect flora as well as fauna of our lakes, of our rivers. So we go in for these treatments. pH control is again very important. If we you know that normal pH of water is around 6 to 6.9 to 7, so it is neutral. So sometimes when we go in for fermentation, the pH changes as different types of microorganisms, they require different types of pHs. Some require acidic pH for the growth, some require basic pH. So we have to set the pH right before we allow the effluent to pass into any water body. So what we do here is we control the pH. The pH can be controlled by addition of chemicals. Again, we can add, if the pH is basic, we can add some acid into it, and if the pH is acidic, we can add some kind of a base. Now, bases and acids which are added, they are natural. We don't add chemical bases or chemical acids. Example is we add vinegar for the as an acid to reduce the pH as such in our preliminary treatment, which is there. So we remove the organic matter also here. Organic matter is required because if we add organic matter into the liquid, into the ponds, what will happen is it will lead to the growth of microorganisms. These microorganisms will start growing in the pond. They will what they'll do is they'll utilize this organic matter for their food, and this organic matter, when they use this organic matter for their food, those microorganisms need oxygen, and what will they is they'll derive that oxygen from the water bodies, and when they derive their oxygen from the water bodies, the microorganisms, that will lead to the reduction in the BOD load of the river as such. Again, will lead to the death of the aquatic life like fishes and other things. Next slide. Now, secondary and tertiary level. The next process which is there, that is called as the secondary treatment as well as the tertiary treatment. Now, first we will be talking about the secondary treatment. Here what we do is we go in for different processes like aerobic processes. Here in case of aerobic processes, we use aerobic lagoons. We use BAF, that is called as biological aeration filtration equipment, which is there. Now, first one is the aerobic lagoons. Aerobic lagoons, they are nothing but they are very long drains of 3 by 4 meters, 3 by 4 by 4 meter long drains. The length can be of any meters. That is not as such, a hurdle which is there. So what we do here is we can go in for these aerobic lagoons. In this, what we do is we allow the wastewater to go into these aerobic lagoons, and we allow it to stand there for some time What happens here is that the microorganisms which grow here are the aerobic microorganisms. These aerobic microorganisms, what they do is they convert the organic as well as other inorganic material which is there in the effluent into the particles like carbon dioxide, water, and biomass, which is not very dangerous, and it is reduced by the help of these aerobic lagoons. The biological oxygen demand, which reduces after aerobic lagoon production, is around 90 to 95%. So we reduce this as well with the help of your aerobic treatment as such. Then we have got BAF, also called as biological aeration, BAC contractors, or the filter equipment. In this case, there is a very large drum. In this drum is containing a wire mesh on top of it. It's a porous drum which is having a wire mesh on top of it. And what we do is we dip this large drum into the water. This drum is having a pipe which is running in the center of this drum, and through this orifice or through this pipe, what you see is, say this is a drum here. So this is a drum here. You've got a pipe running through the center of this thing, and this is covered by your mesh. What happens is when you blow or liquid into it, there is a large surface area on which different types of aerobic microorganisms that can be growing. And what happens in this case is it leads to very fast treatment of the effluent water. So the effluent water is treated at a very fast pace here with the help of this biological oxygen contractors. We can reduce the effluent treatment again. The biological role, BOD level again is reduced to around 90 to 95% here as well. Then is the anaerobic processes. In case of anaerobic process, what we do is, again, anaerobic lagoons can be utilized, or what we can use is we can use closed fermenters where we add our effluent, and what we do is we do not allow the addition of oxygen into it. When we don't allow the oxygen, what happens is the anaerobic microorganisms, they start growing. What are anaerobic microorganisms? The anaerobic microorganisms are the ones which do not use oxygen for the growth. So what happens here is these anaerobic microorganisms, they are the ones which are growing into your effluent, and ultimately what they do is they produce methane as well as biomass as the final product, and help in reduction of the biological oxygen demand load to a very large extent. That is something which is very important. Then is the activated sludge process. Now, activated sludge process is again a very important major process which is done for the treatment of our processes. Now, in this case, what we do is activated sludge. We use a sludge which we have already got from the fermentation. If you remember, when we went in for aerobic processes, there was biomass produced. That biomass which is produced, it contains full of aerobic microorganism. It is having aerobic microorganism. Now, if we add that biomass into the new effluent which is coming for treatment, it gets activated. The sludge which comes, it gets activated and leads to a very fast fermentation process happening. This very fast fermentation process helps in the cleaning at a very fast pace. Now, these microorganisms, they are already there. You inoculate these microorganisms into the incoming sludge, incoming effluent, that will reduce the biological role to a large extent. Then is chemical method. So this is again a very important method where we go in for the cleaning of our, we clean our effluents with the help of these things. Now here what we do in this case in the chemical methods, we can use chemicals, we can use chlorine, we can even use fluorine to some extent. As I've already told, alum helps in flocculation, it helps in coagulation, it helps in many other processes, it helps in the reduction of killing of the microorganisms as such. So we add this alum, which helps the reduction to a large extent. Then is the chlorine treatment. As you might know that chlorine is a very good antimicrobial agent. It kills most of the microorganisms wherever they are growing. And then is the remaining chlorine, that too can be added whenever we feel like into our water body. The chlorine, fluorine, alum, even sometimes we use hydrogen peroxide, H2O2. We can use ozone as well. All these things, when we add to the to our effluent, they help in cleaning of the effluent. And the last, what we do here is the tertiary treatment. Next slide. Now, tertiary treatment again. The tertiary treatment is the final effluent treatment. We go in for the disinfection. If you see this slide here, in the end there is written as secondary clarifier, and then we have got the disinfection. Now, in this, if I start from the beginning, say there was a preliminary treatment here. In case of preliminary treatment, wastewater came up. There was a preliminary treatment in which what we did was we went in for simple filtration, we went in for sedimentation. Then we had got the primary clarifier where we went in for more filtration, went in for more coagulation, we went in for again many other treatments. What you see is the liquid goes up further, and the primary sludge, the sludge which is there, that is, sludge means the solid matter which is there, that is meant for the disposal as well as sludge treatment. The preliminary treatment water goes into aeration tank, where we go in for the aeration of the water, which I had already talked about. That what we do is we go in for the aeration of the effluent. That too leads to the production of aerobic microorganism. What they do is these aerobic microorganisms, they reduce the microbial load. Then we go in for the secondary clarifiers. In the end, again, we can go in for the filtration, and the end is the disinfection. Now, this disinfection is done with the help of UV radiations. This is done with the infrared radiations. This is done with ion exchange processes. This is done with the help of ozone treatment. This is done with the help of chlorine treatment. Then this is done with the help of many other different, treatments which are there. In the end, what you get is a water which is having a biological final effluent which comes out, which is having a biological, load of not more than 99% BOD. So we reduce the biological load to 99% of the original BOD load which was there, and then only we can dispose of this effluent into a water body as such. That is, these are the different processes which we are using, so that we can have our whole process which comes out. Then is next slide. What are the fermentation economics? Why do we use it, and how do we control the fermentation? Now, coming to the controlling of the fermentation, we can control the fermentation by different probes, which I had already talked about. Though, since economics depends upon the controlling of the fermentation. If the controlling of the fermentation is done properly, the economics can go nicely for us. If you earn something, only then you grow something. You earn something, only then you have an engineering team working for you. If you don't earn something out of it, it's useless. So generally, if we are having, we are able to make some profits, only then fermentation or bioprocess engineering is successful. Otherwise, it won't give us the desired results. So for this reason, what we do is we go in for different types of processes. Coming to the controlling of the fermentation, that can be done with the help of offline as well as online sensors which are there. We put the sensors there at different places in fermentation, which tells us about the amount of air which is there, the amount of oxygen which is there, the amount of carbon dioxide which is there, the amount of sugar component which is there, the amount of product which is produced, the amount of froth or foam which is produced. Everything which is controlled will lead to our economics being either on the positive side or the economics being on the negative side. So we need to find out the controls in the fermentation. If we are able to control the fermentation, the economics comes to the positive side as such. Now, coming to the commercialization can happen only when we go in for the profits. So for this, we need to have a capital investment which is reliable. We need to have money first. Minimum capital is required for that purpose. Now, whenever we go in for the production, first thing is the raw material. It should be cheap. You cannot use an expensive raw material because it directly affects your end products rates. Say if I have to produce wine, or say I have to produce whiskey, if I straight away use sugar, as you know, sugar these days is around 40 rupees a kg. The end result the whiskey or wine which I'll produce, generally whiskey which I'll produce, that would be, the charges would be very high. So for that reason, my raw material should be cheap. In this case, it can be either potatoes, it can be either blackstrap molasses, it can be any other useless thing which is thrown as such, which is very cheap. We can use that for our production. So that is something which is there. Then is utilized efficiently and properly. The alternative materials should be very, the materials, the raw material whichever you're using, that should be feasible as such. It can give us the desired results. So we have to find out those economics as well. If the economics are right, everything is right with the fermentation process. So you have to find different ways. We have to reduce the cost as possible so that our results which we get out of this thing are towards the positive side as such. So we are trying to find out the ways in which the efficiency of the product is high. The product gets cleaned up easily. Even when you go in for the downstream processing, it should be easily we should be easily be able to get it out of the broth so that it can be used for commercialization purpose. It should not be like we can produce a product and we can't sell it. We need to produce a product, we need to isolate that product, and it should be stable, the product should be stable. Only then we can get into the profit side of our production. So that is something which is very important. So we have to find out the ways with which your raw material costs are reduced, your working costs are reduced, your downstream processing costs are reduced, your selling costs are reduced, your marketing costs are reduced. Everything we need to find out. Only then we are able to have our proper we are able to have our profits from that. Example here being, say I have to produce insulin and I have to produce whiskey. These two are different products. In case of whiskey, I don't need, in case of wine or whiskey, I don't need a very high level of sterilization. Whereas in case of insulin, I need very high level of sterilization. Now, if the sterilization conditions are very high, that means my processing cost is also very high. So I can't have very high level standards of sterilization in wine production or whiskey production, because what it will do is it will lead to the increase in the cost of the product, in the end product. And if the cost of the end product is increased, there is a very major backlash on the profit margins which are there. So we have to find out the ways. Whereas in case of insulin, if we are not having a properly sterilized product, it will lead to a major problem with the patient which is given the shots of the insulin, or which is who is taking the insulin. If the product is not properly sterilized, what it will do is it will lead to the other problems with the patient as such. So there, the cost of the product, as well as the feasibility of the product, as well as the sterility of the product, that too matters a lot. So in that case too, we need to find out the ways where we can go in for the sterilization, as well as in the end product being very clarified, very clear, and very much in crystal form. So there, these are the two different examples which are there. So that is, next please. So this is all about my whole talk which was there about fermentation. Before I ask you for the questions, I would like to show you one video which is there. Uh,
It will take about a second, sir. Over.
no problem.
The overall goal of this procedure is to set up a bioreactor that will provide a controlled environment for large-scale growth of bioengineered cells. This is accomplished by first assembling the vessel, calibrating the pH probe, and autoclaving the assembled vessel. The second step is to attach the autoclaved vessel to the fermenter base and to set the parameters for impeller speed, temperature, pH, and oxygen saturation. Next, the bioreactor run is initiated so that the desired impeller speed, temperature set point, and oxygen saturation are achieved. After manual calibration of the oxygen probe, the final step is to inoculate the bioreactor with the bacterial culture and monitor the conditions of the bioreactor by the computer software. Ultimately, the growth characteristics of the culture can be analyzed, and the culture can be processed for extraction and purification of the desired product.
In this video, we demonstrate the setup and operation of a bioreactor for bacterial fermentation. The visual demonstration of this method can be useful, as the assembly, calibration, and monitoring of the bioreactor can be a challenging task for individuals not familiar with this technology. Okay, let's get started.
To begin, add bacterial medium that is not heat labile to the clean vessel. Only add until maximum working volume is reached, which is 3.3 liters for a 5-liter total volume vessel. Mount the vessel headplate, ensuring that the O-ring seal is properly seated. Install the exhaust gas condenser. Install the harvest pipe into its 10mm port. Place a piece of tubing on top of it, connect to the sampling bottle, and clamp the tubing off. Install tubing and a 0.2 micron filter on the sparge inlet, and then clamp this off. To calibrate the pH probe, gather 2 reference buffers in small beakers, a wash bottle, and a wash beaker. Hook the pH probe up to the fermenter and turn it on. Scroll to the pH parameter, and then, using the menu button, scroll to the Cal option and press Enter. Select 2 for 2-point calibration. Wash the pH probe tip and submerge it in the low reference buffer. The value on the fermenter will stabilize. Using the plus and minus keys, adjust the displayed value to match the value of the pH reference buffer. Once it stops blinking, press Enter. Next, wash the low reference buffer off the probe and insert the probe into the second reference buffer. Allow the value to stabilize, and then use the keypad to make the displayed value match the high reference buffer value. Press Enter to confirm. Wash the probe tip and disconnect it from the fermenter. Put the protective cap on the connection and install it in the head plate. Open the oxygen probe tip and check to ensure that there is enough electrolyte to cover the tip. Install the oxygen probe in the head plate. Make sure the autoclave cap is put on to protect its electrical connections, as it will be sterilized prior to calibration. Next, obtain a bottle for reagent feed with a dip tube and air filter. Add pump tubing to the dip tube port and attach the other end to the inlet port on the fermenter. Place tubing on all unused ports and then clamp off the tubing. Install a 0.45 micron filter on the exhaust gas condenser. This filter ensures that the vessel does not pressurize in the autoclave. Check that all tubes that go beneath the level of the media are clamped off to prevent media from leaking. Place the vessel in the autoclave and autoclave for 25 to 30 minutes at 121 degrees Celsius using a liquid cycle. Once the autoclaved vessel has cooled, the next step is to install it on the fermenter base. Then hook up the pH probe cable. Attach the oxygen probe cable and hook the sparger up to the gas addition rotameter. Turn the fermenter on. While maintaining sterility, add 1 molar sodium hydroxide reagent to the bottle with the dip tube and install the pump head on the base pump head spindle. Put the temperature sensor in the thermowell on the head plate. Ensure that it goes all the way to the bottom of the thermowell. Lower the agitation arm onto the vessel's impeller coupling. Make sure that the fermenter is on. Check that water is available to the fermenter. Turn on the air supply to the fermenter. Scroll to the temperature parameter and set the temperature to 37 degrees Celsius. Press the Enter button to start the temperature control. The vessel will heat up in 15 minutes or less. Turn the gas flow to 1 vessel volume of media per minute or less. For this setup, gas flow is 3 liters per minute. Bubbles should appear at the bottom. Scroll to the agitation parameter and set to 300 RPM. Press Enter to turn on the agitation. Once the temperature has reached 37 degrees Celsius, scroll to the pH parameter and set it to 6.8. Turn the pH control on by pressing the Enter button. Set agitation to the maximum speed of 1000 RPM for the run. Ensure that the oxygen probe is polarized properly to display proper values. After 2 hours, scroll to the oxygen parameter. Use the menu button to select the calibrate function and select the 1-point calibration. After 15 minutes, use the cursors to set the value to 100 and press Enter. This will calibrate the oxygen saturation. Scroll to agitation and set to 300 RPM. Using the menu button, turn the cascade to on in the agitation menu. This will increase the speed of agitation in an effort to fragment air bubbles and force more oxygen into solution as demand increases due to growth. Scroll to the oxygen parameter and set the value to 30. Press the Enter button. Start the control software package on the PC. Once the probes are calibrated, agitation is stable at 300 RPM, temperature is at 37 degrees Celsius, and pH is close to 6.8. It is time to inoculate. Using alcohol, sterilize the port that will be used for inoculation. Draw the inoculum into a syringe and add it into the sterilized port. Close the port. Mark the time of inoculation in the computer log. It is also important to take a sample at inoculation time. After opening the clamp covering the harvest port, push a syringe plunger to clear the line, then pull back on the syringe to draw a sample. Unscrew the bottle and discard the first sample because it has been sitting in the pipe. Reattach the bottle and use the same syringe plunger to pull another sample. Remove the bottle and empty the contents into a cuvette for testing. Push air back through the pipe using the syringe and close the clamp on the sampling port tubing. Determine the cell density and pH and log the values. With microbial cultures, it is useful to log values every hour, but the sampling interval is culture dependent. The harvest methodology will depend on the intent for the culture after growth is completed. In this case, sample the culture a final time to receive endpoint values for cell density and possible pH or measurement of wet cell weight. Lastly, open the head plate, harvest the culture, and then dispose of the vessel content in a designated kill tank with bleach or other antimicrobial agents. In this video, the setup and operation of a typical benchtop bioreactor system was demonstrated. This figure shows the bioreactor at the beginning of a run, with all parts labeled and connected. The data output for a representative bioreactor run is presented in this figure. At the start of a stirred tank run, the temperature was set at 30 degrees Celsius, impeller speed at 200 RPM, pH at 6.5, and oxygen at 57.2%. The parameters may be different for each experiment, but before addition of bacteria, the system should be at steady state. In this next figure, the change in oxygen concentration with the addition of the bacterial culture is shown by the blue line. The feed pump delivers the bacterial seed culture at an OD of 0.1, causing an immediate drop in the O2 level. The bioreactor responds to the changing O2 level with an increase in the impeller speed. This final screen image of the bioreactor software shows pH change over time, represented by the dark blue line. The pH of the culture was monitored continuously, and over time it decreased as lactic acid was produced, and then increased. The entire run can be analyzed and parameters adjusted for subsequent experiments.
After watching this video, you should have a good understanding of how to set up and monitor a bioreactor for expression of a recombinant protein. Fermentation systems are used to provide an optimal growth environment for many different types of scale-up cultures. The ability afforded by fermenters to carefully control temperature, pH, and dissolved oxygen concentrations in particular make them essential to efficient large-scale growth and expression of fermentation products. Thank you for watching this video, and best of luck with your experiments.
So that is it regarding our video, girls. And please, students, anyone wants to ask question? Anyone who wants to ask question can ask the question.
Students, you can type in your chat room, Zoom chat room. Sir will see all the details related to it. Any queries you can ask. I think it's done, sir. Though no
Okay,
queries.
I hope. Yeah, I think it is done. So I would like to thank once again to our principal as well as to our principal, Dr. Ajay Sureen, as well as to my other colleagues who have been working here very hard for the successful completion of this seminar. We'll meet tomorrow as well, with
Dr. Simi and Sushil, sir.
Dr. Simi as well as Dr. Sushil, who will be giving us their valuable lectures on physics as such. So thank you very much all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So
And
bye from me
we are
as well
ending
as
this
my
Zoom.
co-host. So bye from me as well as my co-host Vidu.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.